Welcome to Top of the Grid podcast, hosted by myself, Scarlett Archer, and Amber Jones.
Today we have a very special guest. It is Alex Brundle, the broadcaster, commentator and racing driver, and we're going to chat to him all about his journey in racing and also in his broadcasting role. But then, have you found that motorsport from a racing role and also a broadcast role has matured you? Because I find that for a 23-year-old, or whenever this podcast comes out, I might be 24. I'm
Happy birthday.
Mature. Thank you. It's Valentine's Day. We don't know when this is coming out yet, so this could be before or after.
Okay.
But I always find people always say to me, "Oh, you're not 23, you're not 24. Like, you look or act a bit older." And I'm like, why is that? And I find that in motorsport, obviously as a broadcaster, presenter, event host, whatever it is, you can't be goofing about. You can't be unprofessional. You have to be quite serious. Yes, it depends on your role if you can be a bit energetic and more lighthearted, but for the most of it, it's a serious sport. You need all your information and all your knowledge. So I found that really made me mature quite quickly. Scarlett is super mature as well, still at school, still studying and doing these huge roles, working for F1 Sky Sports. It's crazy. So did you find that for yourself in racing, that you had to mature a bit quicker?
Yeah, I mean, you guys both doing an amazing job. I echo that point completely. Yeah, because motorsport condenses life into a very short space of time. So, in terms of, I often say this, you go and look at a race like the Le Mans 24 Hours. Within that race, you'll sort of be high for a bit, and then something really bad will happen and you'll be really low for a bit, then you'll fight back. Then, there'll be a small setback and then you'll fight back from that. Then you'll feel a bit of pressure. Then you'll have to deliver your bit. Then you watch your teammate. There might be a disagreement in the pits. Through that 24 hours, in terms of key experiences of life, you've lived more major emotional changes than most people do in 6-8 months, maybe a year. So in fact, actually, you're just, again, you're just doing reps on management of the mind. And it's the same in broadcasting. Your first hit, let's say you've got 3 hits in a show, for an audience non-broadcast savvy, a hit would be what we would call your bit, right? So you come to you and you're doing your interview or whatever. The first one, you'll have a tech issue, which you'll have to overcome. Might be a bit scary. So then, you'll do that bit, but you'll overcome that. So there'll be a sense of pride. And then the next one will go worse. And the final one, you'll nail it. And so you've lived this. And I do think kind of a high pressure career does mature you in that way. And as well, criticism matures you as much as it's uncomfortable.
Yeah.
There is something about, and nobody wants to invite sort of just unconstructive rubbish, but seeing yourself back and having someone go, that about you is not good to watch, and you go, well, and we've all had that, and
it's
that
so
is
difficult.
something that's tricky.
It's difficult, and then sometimes I get told things I need to improve on, and I look at it and I'm like, oh, and it does hurt a bit. And then when you watch it back later, you're like, oh my gosh, yeah, why was I doing that? And you look back at it, but then it's it stays in your mind. And sometimes I get caught on thinking not to do that, and then I miss out on other things. And you're right, I didn't even think that you do go through so many different emotions. It's even after, when you're done, the happiness you feel, is so happy. And then I always find, after doing commentary, I'm so tired after. But when I'm in there, you don't even realize how much energy you're using up. And then as soon as you get out, I'm like, gosh, I was sat down, I was speaking. Yeah, it was quite a while, but I didn't think it'd make me this tired. And I sit down and I'm like, gosh, I want to go to sleep now. But it doesn't feel like that much when you're actually in there, because you're just enjoying it so much. I
mean, your brain uses up a vast amount of energy and water. I get fat over the commentary weekend, because so here's the thing. So you're exactly right, and you sit there burning all of this energy with your mind, but you haven't moved your body at all. There's a factor in looking at the monitors as well. All of the studios you might commentate in tend to be quite cold. Commentary boxes tend to be quite air conditioned as well. So you're using a bit of energy in keeping your body warm. Just that's because of all of the kit that's in there mostly. But yeah, I mean, that's something as well that blew my mind really early on. I mean, the early days of what we call the pit lane channel, where we used to call everything from Porsche Super Cup to at the beginning of the day to Formula 3 qualifying at the end, including Formula 1 in between. I'd go home and just sleep and wake up for the next day as soon as I arrived home. It's a brutal gig.
I think if you don't know your stuff as a female, you really get scrutinized to hell. And I know me and Scarlett work really, really hard to make sure we've got all the facts, all the knowledge, everything. But what I found, it was what you were talking about before, which is quite interesting, is the viewers and the audience don't want to see someone that's rehearsed. I think this is an issue that I'm seeing quite a lot now. You can know your stuff to a T, but it's quite rehearsed. It's not come quite naturally. So, I mean, maybe it's a difficult question for you, but how can you then, overcome that? Or is that just the sort of scrutiny you just have to ignore? Because we're seeing that a lot with women. If they're coming into the sport quite new, they're super passionate about it, but it is new to them. So some of the knowledge is going to be slightly rehearsed. They do know it, but it is rehearsed mentally. Is that okay? Do you think it's okay to keep going like that? Or would you advise go and get as much natural knowledge as possible?
Yes, I would advise that. The sport finds you out, by the way. Yes. If you're and the audience, like, there is no fool. You might be able to fool one person right across the room if you're really, really good, right? If you have 1 million people watching you, they know. Yeah, they know. So, if you're not really passionate about the sport, then they know. And if you've not done the work, then they know. People take their sport incredibly seriously. Their Sunday afternoons are precious. Their time that they get to themselves is precious. One of the things that my father did tell me really early on in commentary was, this is serious. You're giving people prime time of their 48 hours off they have a week, and they've taken that time to listen to you. So get your ducks in a row. One of the things that very early on in calling F1, because calling F1 is extremely different from calling the feeder series. Calling the feeder series is you're dealing with an essentially partisan audience who've probably watched you race. If they're watching Formula 2, they might have watched some World Endurance Championship. They generally know who you are, and you move from Formula 2 to Formula 1, where the audience are way more sort of broad spectrum. They, are interested in Formula 1 from a Drive to Survive perspective, or they've come, from another sport, and they like the drama of it, but they're not necessarily interested in the technicals, and they don't really know who you are. And I was thinking about my first ever grid walk, which I did in Suzuka, not last year, the year before. Will Buxton sat with me in our office in Suzuka, and I'm like, I just, you look at confidence and you're reading comments about your own broadcasting and you're, and a lot of them are positive, and then you start micro-analyzing every scene you've done. Will just looks at me and just goes, whatever your perspective is, there'll be somebody in the audience who sees it the same way as you. Your perspective has value because it's yours. And I'm like, okay. He's like, and nobody else in the entire world has the perspective you do, because you have the unique set of experiences that you have, whether you've driven a sports car or whether you've come into the sport as a young woman and overcome the challenges that entails. Talk about what you know. Talk about what you know, learn as much as you can, and don't try and talk about what you don't.
Don't trip yourself up.
I think that's something that it was incredibly valuable to me. Again, I would tentatively give as advice.
Well, the thing is, it's like every commentator, is their own. It's not like it's something you can learn. You can't look at a certain commentator or like presenter and say, that's who I want to be. I want to be like that, because it's not natural. And I guess you just have to be yourself as well, because you're doing these things for quite a long time. It's going to be so difficult to, try and be something else. You just have to be natural. And, everyone has their kind of like niche, and people like that. Not everyone might agree with what you're saying, but there's going to be a group of people who really appreciate your point of view when they're listening and they're watching. And it'll probably make them realize things about the race that they didn't initially.
It's interesting though, Alex, that you say that, because I think I came into my first like full season job in the sport, and I was still at university, was GT racing. I knew nothing. I could not tell you. I only watched Formula sort of series. I did not know anything about GT racing, and I was like, no, like, should I do this? And I was really like, really mulling over this job of, should I do it? Should I not? Am I going to embarrass myself, or is it going to be a great opportunity for me? And I didn't really know if I was going to have a co-presenter. They didn't really tell me much about what the job entailed. And I thought, oh gosh, no. Obviously I did it, researched everything out of it, but going into it, I'm not completely confident because it's not coming natural to me. This is, again, all research knowledge. But what I found helped me was I did have a co-presenter in the end, which was amazing because he was an ex-driver. So he's got all that technical knowledge that I have, but it doesn't come natural to me because I didn't have the driver knowledge myself. So it worked quite nicely because I could really just focus on honing on my skills as a presenter, learning all the motorsport lingo in the GT world that I had no clue about at all. And I used to go into all the garages and speak to all the teams individually, really annoy all of them to be like, please tell me what's going on with that car and what's this part and why have you changed that and how's it going to affect it aerodynamically? And I used to ask all these questions. So then when I was on air, it did really look like I was super knowledgeable because I used to go in and talk to everyone. And I got a comment on the live stream one time saying, like, oh, it's so refreshing to actually see a woman know what she's talking about, which one irritated me because I was like, stop it. Why are we doing this again? But thank you that you think I know what I'm talking about. Thank you very much, because I do. Well, I kind of do. But it's difficult because I went into the job not knowing. So it's funny, you're saying, oh, make sure you do. But I think I know what you're saying when you say that, because I was really bricking it going into that job, thinking everyone's going to scrutinize me.
But I think the point is that, even if you feel as you felt, that there's still space for you in the role, right? Some of the most successful F1 podcasts are where key individuals slowly learn about F1 via their podcast, right? And just because you feel like you're new to the sport doesn't mean you can't start, right? But I think that where people get tripped up sometimes is they start and then they deliver from a position of somebody who has many years of knowledge. Where be you, man, be you. People want to hear from you because there are going to be people in your audience that resonate with you. I guess don't be afraid of that. I mean, I go on every single F1 broadcast and have to overcome the why should people listen to me about this feeling.
But then,
I've been racing for 20 years.
Super knowledgeable. You've got a great name as well attached to you. So automatically we're like, wow, okay, Alex Brundle, what's he saying? I want to know what he's saying.
But everybody feels like that. Everybody feels like that. But I think that actually, if you don't feel like that, it's a problem, because it means that you're not justifying your own opinion properly. So if you don't go on a broadcast and go, all right, I think this. Why should people agree with that? Well, actually, I'm going to tell them not only what I think. I'm not just going to opine over the television set or the computer. I'm going to go, I think this because of X, Y, and Z,
and give a reason.
And then you're broadcasting, right? I feel, rather than just going, X is great, that Y is rubbish, and that's and that's the bottom line, because Alex Brundle says so. I don't. It's not,
and he's always right. Alex Brundle's always right.
But you got to have some sort of some why, right? So.
And then before we move on to the game part of our podcast, I do want to ask. There's mixed opinions about F1 Academy. So I'd really, really love to know your opinion. Do you think it's crucial, or do you think, the sport as a whole should be doing a little bit more than just putting on, a female-only series?
F1 Academy I like. I think that it's necessary from an optics perspective, because I feel that young women need to know that they can race. That is what I think F1 Academy does. Whether F1 Academy actively promotes somebody, I mean, I know Abby Pulling's going to go and drive a GB3 car for Rodin. and move through to the next stage. She's a great driver. I've seen everything that she's done, which is fantastic. I've called some of the races. I think that young women need to know that they can race. And I think that there has to be a series like that to give that reality to them. I'm hoping, and I believe F1 Academy are kind of hoping as well, that actually in the medium to long term, it's one of those a kind of good solutions that edits itself out of the process. So actually, if you do F1 Academy for long enough, I would hope that enough young women start because they perceive that they can make it to F1 Academy and then beyond, that in fact so many young women start that they actually don't need F1 Academy anymore. And then we arrive into a sort of more balanced general flow of women through motorsport.
Yeah, because one of the things
would be my view.
One of the things is that, I know you said it's not like the biggest thing is if you start, karting, say, at a really young age, but there's loads of boys starting karting at young ages and there's not that many girls. So, I mean, there's more girls getting into it now, but, then boys already have that advantage because they've been doing it for longer. So if F1 Academy gets, more younger people into karting or, some kind of motorsports at a younger age, then, like you said, they might not even need it. They can just, get loads of girls into it going through. And, that would be fantastic.
I mean, you look at, for example, let's say, I mean, I don't know exactly the numbers, but let's say 100,000 men begin karting in, global area X. Maybe one of those men will make it to Formula One. If 10% or, if 10,000 women start karting in the same global area, then narrow down. We can't work in percentages of people, right? There are 20 drivers on the Formula One grid, soon to be slightly more, but there are 20 drivers in the Formula One grid. The number that will arrive in Formula One is zero from those people. That's it's not an opinion, that's just maths, right? You have to, the only way to make sure that we have a female representation in Formula One is have enough women start so that as all of these people charge towards the pinnacle of motorsport and fall by the wayside, there's enough of a body of people that want to do it in order to get a balanced representation in F1.
Because it's not just about getting girls into it and having someone, get to the top, because you don't just want a girl just to have a girl in Formula One, say, but it's not fair because you see so many men getting into it. And as you said, only one will get in. So how is it fair to compare such a small amount of girls and then just say, oh, girls aren't great at motorsport, because you're not seeing the same numbers of people. If you cut it down to the same amount of men and women, and we probably would see some girls into it, but that makes sense because it's maths.
Exactly. Women not being capable of driving racing cars is objectively untrue, right? So that it is as simple as that. Alice Powell's a great driver. I've raced with her around the Monaco street circuit in a GB3 car over 45 minutes. And we crossed the line together, right? And I went on to have. You might not think I'm a great driver, but I went on to have a reasonable career in sports cars, as Alice has, and continues to be involved with Alpine. So, Abby Eaton's an amazing driver. Abby Pulling's an amazing driver. Dorian Pound's an amazing driver. The Iron Dames in the World Endurance Championship lead races on merit, right? So it's objectively untrue. What I think people perhaps don't grasp are just and I think it's a general issue we have in motorsport actually, is the burnout rate of making it to Formula One, because we only see really the top level as a casual viewer. We don't realize just how many young men there are trying to make it. How many young men start trying to make it to Formula One? You're talking hundreds of thousands of boys starting karting, with a bit of funding behind them and an insatiable passion to become Formula One drivers. So it needs to be the same for young women. And it's
Oh, sorry, no, carry on, Alex.
Well, it's not just some girls starting. You need an army of young women starting to find the girl that you need to turn into the woman to get there.
No, I was going to say, I also think it's obviously happening outside of motorsport as well, that you hear these awful comments that women can't drive on the road, in road cars. So if we have that just from the general public that have no interest in motorsport at all, it's no wonder that it's also then carried on into racing, which is seen as more, intense compared to road car driving. So I think that's a difficulty, is we don't need to just change it in motorsport. We need to collectively change it in sort of the entire world. That why are women bad at road car driving? Like, where has this come from? Because one woman was bad or 3 women weren't great on the road, and then collectively all women can't park and they can't do this, they don't like motorways. And I just think it's these big stereotypes that we really just need to diminish. Of course there'll be women that can't drive, like there's men that can't drive.
I've sat next to plenty of men. I've sat next to plenty of men that can't drive.
Exactly.
I used to coach at Silverstone and beyond. But yeah, I mean, I think all of those stereotypes can be essentially written off as sexist, to be honest. But I do agree. I do agree with you that to generally perceive women as people that can't drive, it's obviously untrue. Motorsport has a great role to play, and that's why I really like the wild card entry element of F1 Academy as well, because just grabbing women out of those local areas and putting them on track it is great to see. And so I think that women on track is a big part of a general drive for women to be behind the wheel. And my sister is an automotive designer, and is incredibly valuable in her field, because so many and increasing numbers of automotive purchases are made by women. So that's great to see. And I think that in the historic car space as well, we have a huge amount of increase. I guess not a huge amount, but an increasing amount of female participation as well. Not only in driving the cars, but also in STEM fields, in making sure that they're in maintaining and modifying and all of those things. So that's all cool to see.
It is changing, which is amazing. That's the whole point of this podcast, really, is just to highlight women making great moves in motorsport, and to help that transition and to help break these barriers, to get more women participation from all the different fields in motorsport. Okay, Alex, we're going to end off this podcast with a little game of this or that. So I have some motorsport questions, and Scarlett has some general questions to know a little bit more about you and your personality.
So my first one is sweet or savoury?
Savoury.
Mine's savoury too.
It depends,
I'd say savoury.
You said that really quickly. I feel like it depends, does it not?
Oh, no. No. I'm not. I do not have a sweet tooth. No, I do not have a sweet tooth at all. I'm a no dessert guy.
That's how you stay in good shape. So maybe it's best to just do that. Skip the sweets and the desserts and the high calories.
I smash pizza flat out, so I wouldn't.
Oh, wait, actually, before we go on to my next one, do you put pineapple on pizza?
No.
Good.
Okay. I hate pineapple on pizza.
We still like you, Alex. It's okay.
Race at Monza, for goodness sake.
Okay, my this or that is karting or car racing.
Car racing.
Mine is city or countryside.
Oh, well, I'm actually looking to move house at the moment, so this is very of the moment. So countryside. I grew up in the countryside, and I'm almost done with London.
Oh, I don't blame you. I do not blame you. I am not a London fan. Maybe it's the northerner in me, but I am just not a London fan at all. It's too busy, it's chaotic, it's expensive. No one says hello. What's that about? Why does no one talk to each other in London?
I get really grumpy walking through the station when people are slow. It's really bad.
Do you know they do people indicators now for the pavement, so that if you want to walk slower, you can just sort of. Yeah, no, I've got to the stage. I've got to the stage where I whisper, "Come on."
Yeah, like
under my breath now, and so that's it. I thought, right, Alex, you're becoming rude. Leave the city, and there we go.
Okay, next one is Hamilton or Leclerc.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not allowed to have favourites.
That's true.
So I am. What I always say when I'm asked to choose between drivers is I dislike them all equally because they made it to Formula One and I didn't.
Well, that's a good answer.
Thanks. Just avoid any questions
Yeah.
around that. Okay, so you can't answer that one.
I firmly refuse.
Okay,
I'm afraid.
Okay. No,
We'll have to replace it with another one.
To the next one. Oh, but then can you answer this? Well, this isn't specific to F1 teams. This can be in the sort of automotive industry as well. So answer it how you like. McLaren or Aston Martin?
Aston Martin. I don't know. So McLaren. I'm answering on the road car side, by the way.
Yes.
Because I'm cautiously skirting around, showing any favour, especially between two British-based Formula One teams. But McLaren have just made the same car about 8 times, a carbon fibre twin turbo V8. So it makes something different, man.
My next one is summertime or winter.
Oh, summertime.
That's my favourite.
I look
love
ill
summer.
in the winter, as you can see.
I love summer.
I need to get a filter on this.
And my last one for you, Alex, is wet conditions or dry conditions?
Dry conditions.
Okay.
Because dry conditions, dry race conditions are my favourite.
Yeah, because this is the thing. You'd think that most people obviously would point towards dry, but then when I speak to a lot of, it's mixed. It depends on, I think, where a lot of the drivers that pick wet conditions are like, well, I raced all the time karting. It was always raining, so that's how I just learnt that skill a little bit quicker, and I'm better in the wet conditions. But when someone does say wet, I am like, you are crazy.
Well, it depends what I'm in. So if I've got the best car and I'm just going to drive off into the distance, everybody says, oh, I like a tough race, I like a really tough race. I like an easy race.
Yeah.
I love to do I'll just drive in the lead for a bit and then pick up a cup. I really don't mind, honestly.
Does it get boring? Because I can obviously only really relate it to karting. I do now sort of outdoor karting championships. But sometimes after I've done about 10 laps and I've got no one else in front of me, I do get a little bit like, oh, what's for dinner tonight? And oh, what am I doing? And
yeah. So I got told a couple of times you're supposed to think of a pink elephant that flies on the last 2 laps of a race where you're leading, because it stops you thinking about winning the race.
Oh, okay.
So you're obviously that feeling when you are leading, and honestly, Goodwood is the worst place for this. The circuits that are Goodwood's a bit like this. Brands is a bit like this, especially the Indy. Interlagos is a little bit like it as well. There's that I'm oh my goodness, I'm winning feeling where the track kind of like towers over you, and the crowd are watching. That I always used to find that would give me the sense of pressure.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So a driver called Tim Bridgman, when I was very much younger, he won the Formula Palmer Audi Championship when I did it when I was like 17. So just think of a pink elephant that flies, and it'll make you laugh, and you won't think of the pressure anymore.
Okay, last question for you, Alex, before we end the podcast. Is your dad recently got an OBE?
He did. He's very happy.
Amazing for him. I was going to say, how is he feeling? Did you all go out and celebrate?
Yeah, delighted. I have seen him to celebrate, and I think that he's sort of worked incredibly hard obviously on his career, but also I kind of tried to make the point over X, Twitter, on the day when he received it. He works in other people's interests, far more than is often reported. And I think that, things like the Grand Prix Trust, various foundations and that kind of thing, I'm incredibly proud of him for that side of the work that he does, which I find really inspirational. I think it is definitely a factor in that. But, I have nothing but respect for him. So I've learned obviously an incredible amount from him. So yeah, it was a great moment for our family.
It's amazing.
Yeah, that is honestly amazing. And clearly there's strong genes in the family because you're fantastic in the motorsport world.
Definitely.
So thank you so
Thanks,
much,
guys.
Alex, for being a part of our podcast and being an amazing guest. And good luck for what this season really holds for you.
It's going to be an
Thanks, guys.
exciting season.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate it.